Okay. Hi. Good morning. Good evening. Good afternoon. Hello. Ah,
Whoa.
huh. Um, let's see what time it is. It's 3 o'clock here in the west coast of the Americas, and well, North American way. And it's I don't know. It feels like a great time. As I get, this is the end of the day. This is the time of the day where I start looking for quick ways to get myself home. Like if I've got a really big project ahead of me or a really big task, maybe I have an ideal vision about what I want to do, or I think I got an idea, and that's something you come in at 9 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning, feeling bushy-eyed and no, sorry, bushy-tailed and bright-eyed about. But by this time of the day, I'm looking for a way to go home. So this is why I'm a very big fan of Vaadin. And today's guest is the one, the only, the amazing Marcus Hellberg from the Vaadin team, because it helps people get home on time. Is how I like to think about it, right? Like it's just
Yeah.
I need to get that app up and running fast. I've got 2 hours. Go. I don't know a faster stack in terms of a front end UI and all that, right?
Yeah. Good to hear. Yeah. I mean, you're working from home, so I don't know if that helps you at all, but
It's even worse when you think about it, because you end up working. You don't have that whole commute, so you just end up doing work. Um,
yeah.
yeah, but anyway, yeah, the point is 5 o'clock. I definitely want to be out. I don't want to be sat here ignoring family, Um,
Yeah.
and so I love Vaadin. What is Vaadin? First of all, who are you? Why should they care? And what is Vaadin, and why should they care? It's just, I think they know, but just in case, let's
Just
just
in case.
establish that.
Yeah. Well, I am Marcus. I'm Marcus Hellberg, like you said. I work at a company called Vaadin, and we have full stack frameworks for folks building web apps on Java. And very specifically, we like the Spring community, so we're building a lot of stuff that really leverages all that you guys are building in the Spring community and build on top of that to really make it easy and productive to build web apps on top of Spring. So that's what we
And,
do in a
and
nutshell. We'll probably dive in deeper. Knowing you will probably be waist deep in code here very soon because
well, no, this is a
it
podcast.
says so right in the thing here. Hack on code. Hang
Uh,
on. Yeah.
wow, yeah. Hi from we got one of our comment there. Hi from. You know what I should do? I should post this only under one account. I always forget you can do that. Yeah, hi from the US. Yeah, we're both in this. We're both set in the US at the moment. Um, and so hello from Switzerland, Daniel. Uh, let's see. Software Dev asks, Marcus, hi. What do you suggest to a junior dev, Java, Spring Boot, or C Sharp.net? I can't decide which tech stack I should choose and stick with it. Have any suggestions for reals? Well, maybe you should
I think
answer
you'll get
that.
a biased answer from this crowd.
Yeah, I can tell you where I'd go, but uh, there might be a reason.
Yeah.
Huh.
We are big fans of Java in this
Yeah,
stream. I haven't like used C#.net that's much. Like I can't give you an honest review, but I know I have used Java. I have used Spring a lot. I like it a
yeah.
lot. So
I think that's it. I think my answer's been pretty clear over the years. I like C Sharp, the language, just a bit more than Java, although Java is quickly closing the gap. Um,
yeah, Java's
but in
done a
terms
lot of
of,
great updates in the last couple of years.
oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're closing the delta between C Sharp and Java is closing every day. It seems like, and
Yeah.
um, but but under the hand, in terms of job communities, I think Java is still. I mean, it's pretty consistently ahead of .NET for job offers. If you look at all the different surveys, it's usually in the top five most used languages. Sometimes the top three, or sometimes the top two. Um, it's I think the open source community is more vibrant in the Java community, but C Sharp, the language is glorious, and it's one of the reasons I was so excited to go to Kotlin, which I still
Yeah.
think is Kotlin's great, but I still think C Sharp has a few edges that are a little bit nicer than Kotlin. Um,
Mhm.
so C# is like, I don't like capital letters for my variables. Never will. I don't like capital letters for my methods. Like starting my methods with capital letters. But otherwise, it's a beautiful language. It's a very, very nice language. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
Daniel's
What?
asking more specifically what features you prefer using in C# or
Oh,
Java.
I mean, C# had auto before we had var. They had method references and lambdas from day one. They had attributes, which we call annotations. That was in .NET C# 1.0, whereas it only arrived in 2005, 10 years after Java came out for Java, right? They had generics before we did. They have multi-line strings before we did. They have case expressions before we did. They had like native code. You could actually pin managed memory and interop with native code from 1.0, right? Because they had to make it possible for people building apps in the old Visual Studio C++ 6.0 world and Visual Basic 6.0 world. They had to make it possible for those people to reuse that code. So they had out-of-the-box interop with the native stuff. We just got that, right? Project Panama just arrived less than 6 months ago in Java. It's 2024,
Yeah.
And what else is it? What else does C# have that we didn't have, or we don't? They had a async await. Now here's a hot take. Java did a better job here. Okay, and the reason is because despite the obvious prior art, looking at the ecosystem of languages, you've got Python, you've got Rust, you got C#, JavaScript, which I think C# or JavaScript created async await. It's one of the two, but either way, definitely didn't start in the Java world. That async await stuff, it's been there for the last 10 years in so many other languages, and it feels like a missed opportunity, right? And I didn't realize what the missed opportunity was until I saw it in Java. Or actually, no, I suppose I didn't realize it until I saw it in Go, right? Go did it right. They had default out-of-the-box non-blocking I/O support, and then, but they got away with it only because their entire platform started with non-blocking by default. So it looks like it's blocking code, but it's actually it's behind the scenes. And so Java just did. We actually, it's the one thing I would say that, given a brand new feature, right? A brand new feature to add to a language or to introduce in a language. I think that's the one where we did a better job. Like .NET is, .NET does. They have got a lot more features. They've had them for a decade before we did. Usually, So that's it. Somebody else is saying great point here. So one more question: if C# can do a job, which Java does, oh wait, there's so many questions here. Obviously, there's more than just language versus language, is framework versus framework. That's right, and that's why even though I think Java is not quite as an elegant a language as C#, I still choose to stay on the JVM because there's nothing like Spring Boot. There's nothing like Vaadin. There's nothing like so many of the technologies you hear about. I mean, half the big data space and so much of the cloud is built in Java. There's a reason there, right?
And like you said, just the ecosystem is so great.
Just insane. We were late to the party with open source in the Java community. Java has always been fairly enterprise, and so I remember in the early 2000s, the conversation around JBoss having an open source application server was just scandalous. And Sun wouldn't even get them a license. This is a thing people maybe don't remember, is Sun Microsystems was being very dodgy about letting them certify their JBoss application server as J2EE compliant, right? And that's the precursor to Java EE, which is the precursor to Jakarta EE. It was a huge thing. Like Sun, open source and Java were not a thing up until like 2000. I don't know, when did Java go open source? 2008, something like that, right? It's fairly recently. Like I think
surprisingly recent.
Let me see. When did Java go open source? It was like right before the end of Sun. It feels like 2006. Fairly recent memory. So 11 years into its useful lifetime already. I remember it was like yesterday. Although that said, I guess we're closer to 20 years than we are to 10 years now. But it's a fairly new thing, right? So as and although that said, if you asked most organizations in 2000, I don't think most of them were using open source of much of anything, but 2001, 2002, you start getting the LAMP stack becoming super ubiquitous. By the end of uh, with the end of the 2000s, the 1990s. I mean, you had PHP and Python and Ruby and all this stuff, but it wasn't. It just wasn't there, and so Java was later, but not super late. .NET was super late. Like that's what I'm trying to say. As bad as our entry into the ecosystem was as an open source contender, .NET really got a lot later to the table. Okay. Yeah. Somebody else says one. By the way, it is open source now. I should say that it's open source. It's cross-platform. They did a great job, but it just took them a lot longer. That's another thing where Java led, although not like we weren't the leader. We just happened to be ahead of .NET. What else do they have?
We're very much on .NET today.
Yeah, well, they have. Have you ever played with Blazor? .NET Blazor.
Blazor. No, I've looked at it. I haven't had time to actually get my hands dirty.
.NET is. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's an interesting ecosystem. I just think the Java one happens to be a bit more interesting, and then also the community is just much bigger. So, but it's a bit. But although even there, it sort of depends. There are some towns in this country where if you go there, it's like 80% .NET and then 20% Java. Overall, though, holistically, just looking at the big numbers, you'll find it's more people using Java than .NET. But there are little pockets where it's like this is just a whole companies choose .NET. One more question, if I can see sorry.
Long, so I mean they can't compete with that.
What? Come on, I'm sure there's way better people. One more question: if C# can do a job, which Java does, I see usually in finance tech using Java, but why? Not .NET can't do the job, or I usually use many microservices tutorials, but not many .NET microservices. For microservices, I think Java just got a head start. And remember, Java arrived first. So obviously there's just the first mover advantage. It was there in 1994, 1995. .NET didn't really drop until 2001. And so there's that. That's one thing. By that point, you almost have a decade of people learning Java instead of .NET. In universities, there's just that many fewer books. There's that many fewer tutorials, whatever, classes, curricula. And so I don't think that, I think .NET in theory could do lots of stuff, but it's just meant that because Java's already there and it's worked on cross-platform for a lot longer than .NET has, and because it works really great, you don't need to run Windows. You didn't need to run Windows to run Java. It just had this really sort of, the features that people wanted, even though they weren't necessarily the features that they needed. Java had those features. So I wouldn't say it can't do the job today. I'm just saying maybe that's just the way it's always been for them. But that said, I think there are some things in the Java ecosystem that are really without equal, and Spring Boot, Vaadin are certainly two of those examples. Good questions here. Hi, I'm new to programming, but I like Java better than C# because there's less syntactic sugar. Yes. Yeah, and I've heard that I've heard that same lament because Java is sprouting new features. These features sometimes take the form of syntax, and I can get that can be a little off-putting. And by the same token, languages like Kotlin or Scala are just a lot more. They've had these features, and so they can be a little off-putting for people who are brand new. That said, I think if you're looking at Kotlin out of the gate 1.0 versus Java out of the gate 1.0, Kotlin had dozens of big features and paradigms and syntaxes that Java did not, because Java came 20 years earlier, 25 years earlier. And when did Kotlin come out? 2010, 2009? So let's say 15 years earlier. Yeah, so as a result, Kotlin has these features that Java sometimes, a lot of those features Java has now, but because they were integrated out of the gate 1.0, there was no backwards compatibility issues. They could make this one integrated, cohesive thing, and there was no like,
Yeah.
oh, it works like this, except don't do this because we don't support that because we don't want to break existing apps. So Java feels, I don't think the syntax itself is the problem. What I'm trying to say is I think that all the little pockets of, oh, by the way, these little landmines that you have to worry about in Java that are due to the
Yeah.
backwards compatibility, right?
Yeah.
And this will happen to Kotlin too. This happens to .NET now too, because,
Yeah.
well,
of course. I mean, yeah, you have to
they have to
choose
maintain.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
C# for the longest time, Visual Studio could do a lot of the refactoring for you, right? And so and there's only one true build of .NET, right? That's still basically true today, but basically you got .NET from Visual Studio and you built everything in Visual Studio, and there was no other way to do it really. And so as a result, Microsoft could like break some APIs with less concern. But who cares? There's a button you could push in Visual Studio, which you, of course, would be updating to anyway, because that's what you did, right?
Mhm.
And so it would just fix it for you in the code. Like it wasn't a big deal. Now I think .NET, I don't know, it feels anecdotally like they're doing a better job with backwards compatibility and being like .NET Core, I think is a reaction to what is a stable foundational piece, because other people are going to consume it outside of Visual Studio and and indeed outside of Windows, Um, so
Yeah.
let's see, Java. Oh, enterprise content management, which we do a lot of. We even use some Spring Boot apps. Also, maybe Vaadin in the future. That would be a great fit. Vaadin is, when I think of data intensive stuff, like yeah. What
Yeah.
is Vaadin? I don't even know if it means deer, reindeer.
It's reindeer. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're
It's a
done. Good night,
Finnish,
everybody.
it's
Thank
a
you.
Finnish name. It's yeah. If you look at the logo, you'll see the reindeer.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah, Dimitri, you're 100% right, Dimitri. Yeah, I know today you can do it you can use VS Code, you can use Visual Studio Code, you can sorry, Visual Studio, you can use VS Code, you can use IntelliJ's .NET ReSharper, or you can use, what's the other one they have? They have like two. ReSharper is the plugin for Visual Studio, but then they have the actual standalone one, which I don't really use at all. Not app code. Writer, right? That was like the one. Anyway, yeah, it's definitely a better thing now. But because of that, Microsoft's been very good about sort of being more clear about where the platform ends and the tools begin. So Vaadin is this. Vaadin is this framework named after a reindeer in Finnish. And
Yeah.
what does it do?
So we have this like opinion, which is good to have when you're doing stuff, like you believe in something and you want that
Right.
So what we're really wanting to do is make it easy and productive for folks on the Java platform to build great web apps. And as you know, there are tons of moving parts when it comes to building a web app, and you need to know all these things and how they fit together and do it right, or it's not going to be secure or performant or this or that. And what we want to do is help folks out as much as possible with this. So we have essentially a platform for building web apps on top of Java, most typically on top of Spring Boot, which we like very much. And we more specifically have full stack frameworks, which means that you have kind of the front end and the back end live very tightly close to each other, which allows us to do some magic that you can't really do with a completely decoupled front end and back end. And maybe we'll take a look at some of that. And really the reason we do this weird stuff, it used to be more weird. Like these days you see a lot more full stack frameworks popping up in the front end world. You have like Next.js and stuff where you actually run that topmost layer of the back end in the same app, and that allows the team to move a little bit faster because they can have full control over like, hey, this view needs to call that data, like get that data, and
Right.
then you can internally call all this stuff. And I think we're onto something. Like we did a customer survey pretty recently, and like 98% of our customers said that they feel like they are more productive using Vaadin than they were before. And they're saying that they're essentially saving almost half development time, so like 2x faster. So I think we're onto something here.
Yeah. Oh, huge. It's
So
what? So okay, that's the. So you mentioned. So we. I don't think we're going to do a demo just because it's a podcast and people wouldn't be able to see it. But let's talk about that. You go to start.vaadin.com or what's the create? What? How do
yeah,
you begin your process?
or you could go there, and then I know my friend Josh introduced me to this site. It's called start.spring.io. You
Yeah.
probably a lot. You can go in there and you can add a dependency, search for Vaadin, and boom, you have Vaadin in your project. So this is one of
Okay.
the things that has changed a little bit recently. Like last time I saw you, that might have been in Barcelona, maybe. This was still
Hmm.
not the case, but we've kind of unified our two or unified the way that you build apps, regardless if you use Vaadin Flow, which is like build the UI all in Java, or Hilla, which is like build your UIs in React connecting to a Java backend. So before you used to have like two different dependencies that you'd have to pick like upfront, like I will do this or I will do that, and that would be the case. Now there's like a common core. So you download a project that has Vaadin as its dependency. If you to that Spring Boot project add a Java file with an route annotation saying like, hey, I want this Java file to show up this URL, it'll pop up there. If you put into source main front end views, so we added like a front end into the source folder. If you add a React view there with a name like hello world .tsx and you export a React component there, it'll show up at that URL like that matches the path of the file. So very similar to like Next.js file-based routing, and that way you could have both in the same app, but typically just still have one or the other, but like they're fully interoperable now. So you can like basically some of our customers are like mostly building everything in Java, and then they're like, well, this one view now needs to work offline because our warehouse workers go and do inventory in a warehouse with poor Wi-Fi, and we want it to work there so they can like build that experience in React and have it running on the device client. So even if the server connection poops out at some point, they can then just reconnect and sync up stuff. So
So is that if I go to start.spring.io, not the Vaadin one, I'm sure the Vaadin one does, it sets up everything perfectly. What happens on start.spring? Do we still just get one dependency? Do I have to set up a build plugin? Is that all done for me?
no, you just add Vaadin as a dependency.
And it adds the Vaadin Spring Boot starter, which I knew about, and it adds the Vaadin bill of materials and a dependency in the production. Okay, so it has a Vaadin Maven plugin that sets up the front end stuff. Okay, wow, I didn't know that we changed the initializer like that. That's super cool. Huh, neat. Yeah, this is good. 20 Vaadin's been around for longer than Spring has in some form or another, and
Yeah.
it never stops surprising me. It's always got something really cool uh, happening. Okay, well that's great. So is
Yeah.
it still?
So,
Look at that.
yeah. So I mean, what's really cool, and like I demoed this at Spring IO in Barcelona last time we saw each other, is like what's really cool now is that you can download a project off of Spring Initializer, you add Vaadin, and then you just add a like source main front end views index.tsx and deploy, and it will automatically open your browser and display that component. Then you can have a Spring service and add that browser callable on it, and you can just call Java methods from React, and it just behaves like you have one cohesive app. If you change stuff in your Java code, you'll get compile time errors in your React code, and like it, we're finally kind of getting to the level of integration that we really wanted, where it feels like you're just building this one cohesive app,
Seamless.
and it's seamless. So that's
Oh,
like what's happening in terms of the frameworks, but like I mentioned, Vaadin is a web platform, so we're adding more stuff than just the frameworks as well. We're working on some pretty cool stuff right now, kind of widening the footprint of Vaadin. So you can obviously still just use the frameworks if you want, but one of the things we've just added is a Vaadin Copilot plugin. So that lives within your actual running application. Like in the bottom corner, there's a little Vaadin icon. You click on that, and you can start dragging and dropping components around and changing them. There's a little AI assistant that you can ask to, like, I don't know, make my form look nice instead of ugly, and then it'll like help you do that. Or you could start tweaking around your CSS like live and just see how kind of tweak some variables and get all the kind of components. And it's got some
It's
like cool that we're working on right now. So like I probably forgot to mention, but one of the big kind of selling points of Vaadin is that we have this huge library of UI components that we ship with.
right.
And
That's in Java and in React, right? Like
and in Figma, which is super important because we work a lot with
design language.
UI designers who kind of make a like, here's what the app needs to look like, and then
Right.
typically that's like they'll do that in Figma using something, and then the developer gets it and they look at it as like, oh, I don't know how the heck am I going to like implement that. So by having the same components in Figma as we have in the framework, we kind of force the designers and the developers to speak the same language. And then we're like, well, since they're already speaking the same language, like, what if you could just like copy from Figma and paste into Copilot? So that works now. Like it's still in, but you can just copy like a design built with Vaadin components in Figma, paste it into your app, and it creates the code. And
there's a lot of things you could have put after that sentence. Like, what if we could just copy and paste from Figma to to Copilot, and you, if you had just said what if would be nice, and then just moved on, nobody would have batted an eye. That would be fine. But then you're like, yeah, that works.
Yeah. So what's really cool is that this, like, literally, like, if you have two browser windows, and since we're on a podcast, I can't show this to you, but
yes, imagine
you have two browser windows next to each other. One is Figma, one is you're running like Vaadin application in dev mode. You copy from Figma, you go into the browser, and you just go navigate to whatever view you want it paste into. Then you just paste it, and it shows up. Now, what's really cool is that the way we built Copilot is that it's kind of code first, meaning that code is the kind of definition language of the UI. There is no like intermediary XML or JSON, or
which I love, by the way,
something magic. So the idea is that you always have you always see what's happening. You always have the code. You can always go in and continue coding it. So even like, we didn't want to build a tool that locks people into it. So even if you use this to build your app and then you're like, I'm done using this, you still have all the code. There's no kind of magic abstraction layer created there that's only understood by our proprietary tool or anything. So you can just continue working with that code. And I think that's pretty cool. And
it's super good.
And we're kind of building on top of that as we get in like ideas. So like, one of the things we're constantly, like you said, Vaadin's used a lot for data heavy applications. So we're like, well, what if you could just paste like your like Java object there, and it creates a form based on whatever fields there are there. So that works now. And like, so it's like, since we have this tight integration, we know a lot about your project, and we both control the front end and the back end. We can do a lot of really cool stuff.
This is even the good news is, Marcus, is that even if you did do a demo, I don't think people would understand, and that's because it is a kind of magic. So the demo I first saw, 15 years ago, when we all first met, was like somebody sat down in front of an editor, Java, Java editor, IntelliJ or Eclipse or whatever it was back then, I don't know, and writing Java code. Like, here's a panel, here's a button, here's a label, and you're writing Java code, and it looks like Java Swing, not Spring, Swing, the UI toolkit, right? Or SWT or AWT or whatever, or Windows Forms or whatever. It just looks like you're writing a UI in Java code, and
Yeah.
then you hit the run button, and you go to the browser, and there's an HTML JavaScript app with buttons and events. And so this is the thing I don't. There's some sort of sorcery that happens there, and it is just Java code, right?
Yeah.
So I can actually inject Spring Beans. I can
Yeah.
use transactions. I can talk to my database.
Yeah, you can breakpoint in there and just see what's
Yeah.
happening.
And now, recently, like 5 years ago ish, whatever, less than five, you had this other project called Hilla, which was instead of Java first, it was JavaScript first, and then you connected it to your backend, and then now you've unified those two. So now you can just have in the same code base React and
Yes,
Java.
it was kind of a side project. We wanted to kind of validate it and see that it makes sense. And the reason is that like we see a lot of our customers where they have pretty diverse skill sets in their teams, and they, especially when we're talking about more like full stack teams, it's very common to have like more front end and back end skill sets, and we wanted to make sure that we can kind of still deliver that same basic thing that we've done over the years, where you have like this one fully type safe project that has the component, it has the tooling, it has everything just kind of working out of the box, where you download something from Spring Initialize or add Vaadin, you hit the play button in your ID, and it runs. It even like it you can try this later, Josh, but if you go to like Spring Initializer, we worked on this because it wasn't super intuitive, but if you just add Vaadin, download the project and hit play, it's going to automatically open your browser, and it's going to notice that you don't have any views. So it'll ask like, hey, you just started a Vaadin project, but you haven't got any views. And then it has links, and it can automatically scaffold kind of main layout and stuff for you, like right within the project to get you started if you want to. So
Oh man, that's so cool. and okay, so the design language. This is the you get velocity, which is the name of the game here. This is like so you talked about the magic intermediary layer, and that reminds me of Windows Forms. You had these like whole obstructed hidden parts of the code that you're not supposed to look at because the IDE maintains that, and they'd automatically fold that code for you, and then eventually you get things like Flex and Java effects and all these other things where they had this XML DOM layout structure, and it was you couldn't really define you could, but it was just not natural. You define everything in terms of this XML, and then you wrote the Java handlers in the Java code, and that was, again, you had this intermediary tool that wasn't, you can't breakpoint or understand or scrutinize what's happening there, so Vaadin, it's just Java code, right? And it's Java code that looks and behaves. I mean, it's customizable, but basically, you get some very, very, very good looking default behavior and widgets, and it's extensible, of course. But the beautiful thing here is that you've got a consistent design language, and so you talked about that with the Figma sets, right? If people don't know, Figma is I'm sure you do, but it's a tool you can use to prototype user interfaces, right? And it's really useful because it's not Photoshop, right? The whole point is to not provide all the features that Photoshop has, because the browser doesn't have the ability to render everything that you can do in Photoshop, right? And so what we want is something that looks good across all platforms, and that is resizable, and that does well in mobile, does well in desktops, and looks consistent. And so by forcing people to use a tool like Figma, which has a dramatically simpler palette of tools, they're forced to design in terms of the web, and it allows developers to then look at the picture and go, okay, I could probably make that look. I could probably do that. The problem is that Figma has gotten more and more features, so now it's getting easier for people to design things in there that you can't really turn into an actual application somewhere elsewhere. And I think it's really valuable. Vaadin just comes with these great components. They look great. They're themable. There's CSS if you need it. There's all this stuff, but they're just great out of the box. And so it doesn't have to. You don't have to spend any time worrying about that if you don't want to. You can have a usable app that your boss would approve of and go, okay, this does what we want. Now we could skin it or something.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's kind of the idea. And like you said, they are themable. You can make them definitely kind of look and feel at home in your company.
yeah, of
So
course.
just, but the idea is you can get there very fast. And what you don't necessarily see on the surface of those components is how much work we also put into stuff like accessibility, making sure that they're like usable with screen readers and assistive devices and stuff. And it's really hard to, like, if you just sit down and it's like, oh, I'm going to build myself a little data grid. It's like, that's your entire project budget right there. It's like,
Right
it's
there. Yeah,
do that well. And so we
exactly.
hope to provide like like small and big Lego blocks that you can just use to build up your app with, and kind of outsource a lot of the headache to us instead of suffering yourself.
This is the kind of stuff. Yeah, this is so. It's just so nice to be. I don't want to worry about this. And so by getting rid of that extra tool, by the way, since the components, you're not really affecting the look of the components in the Java code. You're
Exactly.
affecting the arrangement maybe,
Yeah.
and the things that are displayed, but not how they're displayed, right?
Yeah.
And so because of that, it doesn't feel like a big problem to remove that intermediate tool, because that intermediate tool was designed for designers before, um, like they wanted a thing they could manipulate without having to write code. But
Yeah.
if there's tools to round trip between the two and never lose fidelity, then that's the best of all worlds. So you get Java code which people can inspect, and then you can manipulate it if you want.
Yeah.
Is there a design time environment for Vaadin?
What's that?
Is there a design tool for Vaadin?
No, not really a design tool. So you use Figma for designing. Then there's within the Copilot, you can now, like, if you want to, like, you paste something and then you can drag and drop stuff if you want to, like, move stuff around or change properties or do stuff like that. And it's still, like, it's very early on. We have like a billion things on the to-do list, stuff that we want to build, and you can definitely go and try it. I think it's got like a 90-day no credit card or anything required trial that you can go and just have at it and see what happens. Let us know what doesn't work and what should work, and we'll work on that. I'm pretty excited about the possibility of, like, us just removing a lot of boilerplate stuff that people are spending time on, like even further than just like giving components and stuff.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. And like you say, it's building on top of Spring, so it's just your
It's
app, your
great.
UI, your what?
It's great by default because it builds on Spring, is what you were
No, it's
saying.
great by default because it's perfect at what it does, but then you still need to do the other stuff, and now you got Spring to help with that, right? The back
Yeah,
end services kind of stuff,
yeah, and
like
it's so fun because people are asking me, like, does it connect to this database or that thing or that? And I'm like, it's like plain Spring Boot app, like whatever
right,
Spring can do, we can do. And it's like,
right.
it's like
It really this is the
it's not
true full stack solution,
limiting
Um,
yourself, like, and that's the great thing about building on something like Spring Boot is, like, you have like access to everything in the world. Like, you can have access to databases, and you have like cool project like Spring AI and like all these
oh,
that you can do. Uh,
that's a good point, actually. You know how many people have built? I wonder how many millions of dollars you could save in people's lives just by letting them use Vaadin to build. I'm not kidding. You could ship a chat. Do you have a chat agent component that you could ship in Vaadin?
we have like the building blocks of one of those. Yeah.
Well, I know it wouldn't be hard to build it, but imagine if you just had one meta component, whatever that did chat box, hit enter, get a response and a picture if you needed, and then let them plug in their own AI implementation.
Yeah, and it's like one, like, regardless of how you build your UIs, has good support for streaming data, so you can stream
Right.
response from the LLM and whatever. So it is working, and that's one area that I'm personally pretty interested in right now. Is just a lot of our customers are people building business apps, like you said, like these data heavy types of applications, and I think in those apps in general, there are a lot of, like, not very efficient workflows that people are. We're just before we're on this call, I was lamenting about like how slow the DMV is after I moved to Nevada, and you can just imagine the systems that they're working on back there, and it's like, just imagine like if we could figure out like where the like things that we could use just a little bit of AI in those applications to make them
Right.
better. We're trying to figure out like uh, I think a lot of the like AI discussion that's still been around, like here's how you can make it like write jokes and do this and that, but like what are the like more day-to-day real like use cases for AI and business apps? It might be classification, summarization, it could be this and that, and just giving our users the kind of building blocks to easily add those types of features to their applications is, I think, going to be really cool. And
And there's
just
nothing like that. Like I keep thinking about that. It's the experimentation that you get because of Vaadin, right?
yeah,
It's one thing to have an idea, but then you have to build a UI. And
yeah,
like right now, there's a lot of people with ideas around how to integrate AI, and I can't think of an easier way to like validate the idea and show it to somebody than to whip up a prototype with Vaadin, and then why not take it to production since it's already production worthy? Just
yeah.
use the production mode and deploy to your wherever Spring Boot wherever fine Spring Boot apps are served.
Yes,
You can
yeah,
deploy your Vaadin app. You're done.
yeah.
Oh, it's so satisfying.
Uh,
And then
so
also you've got the React stuff too, though. Somebody said you can actually if the entities, if you change the entities in one place, it'll actually the compiler will respond in the front end, for example, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
it's too good,
yeah.
too good.
So what else is new? So you mentioned when you first ran into Vaadin that it reminded you of Swing code, and that
Yeah,
is you're
well,
not the first person to point this out. And actually, that right now is kind of a big source of business for us. Is like folks who are still running Swing, and they're starting to sweat a little bit at this point because they're like by definition, any Swing app that's still running today is going to be very business critical because otherwise it wouldn't be running anymore
right.
today. They tend to be very large and complex, and there's decades worth of like stuff going on there. So we've worked over the past years, and especially now with AI coming in helping out, we've built a tool called a modernization toolkit that allows us to take in Swing code. And right now we're up to about being able to like automatically migrate around 80% of that, like just automatically. So if you have like a couple million lines of that, it can save you a kind of a considerable chunk of change if you want to move that over to like from desktop to web and kind of. So another thing we're
That's
working on,
phenomenal.
it's not obviously like cool and sexy like in the sense of like kind of leading edge technology and stuff, but again, we were talking earlier in the stream about like where's Java being used. It's being used to power all these like important business processes and stuff around the world. And obviously, since Java's been around for a very long time, that means that there's a lot of legacy Java stuff around there that we want to help folks kind of keep running also for the
Yeah,
next couple decades.
if it works, don't. If it ain't broken, don't fix it. Whatever possible. Obviously, sometimes
Yeah,
it just doesn't work. So yeah, fix it.
yeah.
Oh, that's so good. And I just mentioned the deployment, by the way. What so uh we the .NET stuff. I'm sorry, the GraalVM stuff in Vaadin. This is a thing about which I know a little. Is really good as well. So you can actually take an app, build a front end web application with React uh, components as well. I
Yep.
guess now, yeah, and
Doesn't
then have Java components, and they can talk to each other. You can the Java component reference and embed the React component?
Yeah, if you want to.
How do you export it to Java? How does Java know what? How do you type new React component or something or what?
You you essentially have to write like if you have a completely new React component that Vaadin has no knowledge of, you have to like write a Java class
Proxy.
that kind of points to the TypeScript file and then kind of proxies some stuff. So there's a little bit
Okay.
of work involved. Let's just say that like combining components, like nesting them like several layers, and like it's technically possible, probably not like what most people will end up doing. Like they'll write one view,
Okay.
and or most like, let's say like 95% will just probably stick to one language for all of their views, because that makes most sense probably for most people to not have their app written in several different ways. But
Right.
then there are very good technical reasons in some cases where you want to like have one view written in a different way. Like Java is super good with like dynamically just inspecting whatever you get from a database and generating fields on the fly and
Right.
doing stuff super dynamically, whereas uh, doing stuff in React gives you much closer access to the DOM. So if you need to do some crazy animations, or you want it to run offline, or do something that's more kind of closer to the browser, you can do that. But
Uh-huh.
again, like most projects just kind of stick to whatever feels more natural to their skill sets and preferences.
Oh, that's so cool. So okay, so you can do that. You can build an app with either, both, or one of those choices, and then build and it's got full user interface no matter which approach you use, and it's got all the backend capabilities, and then you can turn it into a native image. So it takes
Yep.
what is the footprint reduction you're seeing anecdotally, not scientifically, not a guarantee, no warranties implied, but yeah,
I don't know. So I have a like a little chat with Vaadin Docs application that I've been running the
yeah.
past year, all VM native image. I haven't seen it go above like 110 megabytes of RAM
And that's got
consumption.
AI and stuff.
It's got AI and all kinds of stuff happening. So I mean, it doesn't use a whole lot of resources. It starts up super quick, like less than a tenth of a second. So
Okay,
very
so I think
I'm
very compelling experience for people in the front end. Yeah, this is so good, so good. So we're doing okay. I guess we've done a good enough job. I didn't know about half the stuff, and you and I talk fairly often. It's not like we don't
yeah.
get to hang out, but I didn't even know about half the stuff. This
Yeah.
has been a very
We
good
we
call.
still like we've been very busy, so we still have like one more component we haven't talked about that we're introducing, which is kind of a more runtime component called Control Center, which kind of helps you manage Vaadin apps in production. So it kind of lets you uh, manage Vaadin apps running in a Kubernetes cluster, do rolling updates, manage user authentications. You can set up like different, like it uses key cloak, but you can kind of get a nicer UI for that and set up like multi-factor authentication for your apps, and set up social logins, and get all kinds of information about your app. So that's still like very early on, but just kind of to give you an idea of like where we're moving. We're both moving kind of earlier in the software development with like getting the designers on board and helping kind of
Right.
move design to app, but also kind of widening in the other direction too, with helping folks run button apps in production. So we're doing a lot of stuff. We like this next year is going to be like a lot of cool new stuff coming out all the time.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. You're all firing on all pistons. This is super good. Uh, I'm gonna use it. We should do another live stream. Maybe we can get our your star advocate Lawrence to join us,
Yeah.
and we could do we should do another this time an actual proper video. But where do people go if they want to find out more about this stuff? I guess is the question.
Vaadin.com is the place to go. You'll find everything you want there. Or
It's a shame I haven't. You don't give
start.
out those little books anymore.
No, we don't have the books, unfortunately.
I do miss those. Those were great. Um, okay, Vaadin.com. And then if you want to create your own, I guess you go to start.spring.io. But also, what's the Vaadin experience? Is that still there?
Yeah. I mean, if you go to Vaadin.com and hit the big blue button.
Yeah, there it is.
So,
Start.vaadin.com.
so I mean, what that does is it allows you to like pre-configure some views and stuff before you download the project starter. So you can upload some stuff up front if you want.
It's amazing. I've already got an app I can just hit download. I while you've been talking. Oh wow, you can actually just look at that layout with content areas, header. Thank you. Add this. Yeah, great. I'm already good. So this is good. I'm gonna go get myself an app and I can deploy to production. Where are you on the internet and do you want to be found? And if so, where do you find?
Yeah,
Where do
I
people
just
find
started
you?
using the internet like last week. It's pretty
So,
interesting. Folks have strong opinions about stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm on most platforms at Marcus Hellberg. Just my name spelled together, no dots or underscores or anything else. So should be able to find me.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
And well,
And also Josh and I will be in Frankfurt for Vaadin Create in
you
October
got it.
29 to
That's gonna be
30.
so fun.
So
That'll be fun. That's soon actually. It didn't feel soon because you and I have been talking about it for months and months now. But
yeah,
yeah, that's fast approaching. Um,
indeed.
okay. Do you think we could do a demo where we show everything we talked about today?
I think we can. We'll make it happen.
All right.
Problem is that the team's going to have like 10 new things for us by the time that rolls around, but
we'll just do all that too. Why not? Like I'm drunk with power. Vaadin makes me feel so like
yeah.
I want to go to production and especially if I just have an idea that the UI is the thing that frustrates me, and now it no longer does.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been fun.
A ton of fun as always. Thanks for
Yeah,
having
my
me.
friend. See you soon. Bye, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. Bye-bye. Bye.